Hi, I'm Adam from 10 Square Games, and welcome to Be Ahead of the Game, a series of interviews where we talk to people responsible for delivering our great games to the world. In this episode, you'll find out how big of an impact developers have on game design, and how hard is it to transition from IT to gaming. All right, hi Aga. Let's start with the basics then. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do at 10 Square Games?
Hi. Well, that's an interesting question because I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm not that long here in TSG, but my official title is Head of Front-End Development. So in general, it consists of two parts, which is working with the people, ensuring that they can grow and develop themselves, but also making sure that developers can focus on the important stuff and fun stuff, which is making games. So removing all the obstacles from the technical part that they can encounter during development.
Awesome. So how long have you been working in gaming? What drew you to choose this profession over others?
Well, I have been working in gaming pretty much my whole career. I started in gaming. I guess I was lucky. I finished computer science, so in general, I was supposed to be just like a programmer doing software development most of the time, but I was really unhappy about that during my studies when I was like researching what I can do, and I couldn't find anything that is interesting enough. But luckily, someone showed me the Unity engine, and that just showed me that you don't need to only code, but there's so much more creative space that you can also embrace. So I pretty much have been in gaming for over 10 years. Mostly started with mobiles because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do, and now I'm here.
Awesome. And are you a gamer yourself, or did you just get into it because you liked Unity and just the creativity of it?
Well, that was one part, definitely, that there are no two projects that are the same, which is really nice. So you don't need to repeat your work every single time. But the other part, I was always playing games. Not maybe super hardcore like some other my colleagues at work, but I have been always somewhere in the background. There was always games, and it just continued through my life like that. So I'm still playing quite a lot. I pretty much play anything that is there, that is popular, that is mainstream. I just go for it. It's That's how it works.
So what's your favorite all-time game, or maybe like three, because I know it's hard to choose just one, but like if there's a game that serves as a big inspiration and you really love playing?
That is a difficult question to summarize only like few games. But if I would look at Steam, let's say, and how many hours I have played some games, that is, I guess, some indication as well. So probably would be one Civilization. I have played also a lot of Clash of Clans and Clash Royale. I think those are the two longest played games on mobile for me. But pretty much anything goes. I play, sport games, FIFA. I play some first-person shooters as well. Right now, I'm just playing Dying Light. So
yeah, I could definitely relate to playing just basically anything that you can get your hands on. So because you're Polish, but you've been working in Finland a long time, and now you're back at a company that's headquartered in Poland. And what do you feel that are the biggest differences between the working cultures in Poland and Finland?
Well, I think the biggest difference that I've noticed now working here some months, I think, is the reactiveness and also the ambition level. It's not like in Finland they are not ambitious. I don't want to sound bad for Finns. But in general, they take a lot of time, planning and preparing. And here, people are definitely more like, let's play with the fire, So they just go for it. They have idea, they go for it, try to execute, and see what happens. In Finland, that rarely happens. and you can see that in the culture. So it just goes, all the way from the roots to the way how they live and how they work.
So how would you describe the working culture in TSG in particular? What do you like about it? What really draws you in here?
I think the most intriguing part here is just the combination of so many individual approaches that we somehow make it work. There's so much creativity and so much people trying to pursue their quite high ambition levels. And in TSG, you have the freedom to actually do that. There are multiple projects, multiple different ideas how to make something good. and we allow people to just be creative. And I think this is something quite unique.
So if you were to say off the top of your head, like an example of that, of like that kind of cultures.
Well, I don't think, for example, we limit ourselves to one specific genre when we make games. If someone has really strong vision and idea about what kind of game they want to build, there is no barriers for us to actually do that. So it's more just, if you have the idea, you can pursue that. And in most of the companies, there is quite specific direction which the company is supposed to go. And if there is something then comes up, because the market is quite let's say dynamic, a lot of things changes, a lot of things are happening all the time. So I think we need to be really flexible to allow us to be successful and experiment. And I think the experimentation part is something quite unique.
You say the market is dynamic in gaming, but on the other hand, there are voices that say that the mobile industry is kind of stagnant for the last few years. So basically that there are no new like hit genres like the Clash genres or Angry Birds before that. And do you think that like mobile gaming is all out of new ideas, that we don't have the potential to build like a new hit?
Well, I definitely think there is space for new things, but I also agree that we are a little bit stuck, especially like on mobile. You can definitely see that companies are going for more like safe bet. Even like even if you compare Supercell, Supercell has been investing now a lot in their existing titles to make them grow, and they have been struggling a bit to introduce new games and new mechanics. So there is some kind of trend of just going with the existing recipe that is successful and with tiny small iteration. And I believe that from player perspective, that is really tiny change, so it feels a little bit the same. I even from myself, like when I'm playing on mobile, I'm playing the older games. I don't really play now the newer game because they are pretty much just the same thing all over again.
So as front-end developers, how do you think you can impact or make a change to maybe help create that new kind of quality in mobile gaming, and especially at TSG? Like, how big of an impact do you really have here on the design process and on creating new ideas?
Well, I think from front-end developers, it's huge impact, because in the end, we are the glue that are combining, the visuals and the design part in actually something that is functional and works. On one front, of course, we can make tools for the designers to tweak things, but if you don't fully understand the design, there is no way you can actually make the feature as good as it can be. So there's a lot of opportunities that you can also influence the design, because when you are working on the feature, you are always testing it and iterating when you are completing that. So you can introduce any modification that you feel is good based on your experience. So yeah, I think it's really a big impact that developers can have on the actual final game.
Right. So speaking of developers, last year, TSG created the Unity Boost program for IT developers looking to become game developers. How hard do you think a transition like that is from traditional IT to game development?
Well, I think it's not impossible, but you definitely need to have some base. So you still need to be interested in gaming. I think without that, you will struggle in the industry. And the other part is, from the technical skills, I think that is like easy. It's really nice to also get perspective from other industries that you can bring to gaming industry. But with what is unique about making games is the constant change and iteration process, because it's a creative business. It's something that we cannot always plan ahead. There's always a lot of changes coming up. There's a lot of feedback from the players that we need to integrate. So if you are not going to embrace that your work is designed to be changed all the time, you are going to struggle a bit.
So you said it kind of requires a certain amount of passion that many people might not have. So we spoke about the passion that a game developer has to have to work well in the industry, but the problem is that a lot of passionate people will say that mobile games aren't as serious as PC games, and they don't want to get into that, and that they only want to make real games. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the problem is like, you know, any creative business. I think it's just a matter of changing also like the times, and you know the mobile devices are becoming more prominent in our day-to-day life, and they are also becoming more powerful. So I think it's a matter of time that, you know, the games will be, let's call it, as deep as, you know, the console games or AAA. But you know, like with, for example, movie industries. Before, like TV series, they were also not considered a real piece of art. It was always the full time like movies. So I think that's a little bit similar with currently what we have with mobile games and console and PC games. But in the end, like what I like about mobile games is that they are so accessible. You can just play it everywhere, anywhere, and you have much bigger user base. So in the end, we are making games for the players. So that's the platform that you are going to reach the biggest amount of users in the world. So, you know, it's like, I think it's the best platform to be on.
So basically, in a way, we're waiting for The Sopranos or Breaking Bad of mobile game development
Exactly.
to kind of be able to drive people towards being like, this is creative. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, I think we are still, you know, figuring out the type of gaming that we want to be. And you know, there's a lot of different opportunities. Like you can pretty much make any game now on mobile. So, you know, let's try to be creative, experiment, and I think we can remove that bad tag that is now on the mobile games.
Awesome. So do you have any tips for somebody who would like to become a video game developer, like what they should focus on when developing their skills or educating themselves?
Well, okay, I cannot probably tell about, you know, all the other disciplines, but let's focus on mostly on programming, as this is my specialization. So I think it's the easiest way if you start doing, you know, some small prototypes, and it's the main focus. It's not about, you know, making the biggest game or, you know, like super extreme difficult feature for that game, but just, you know, completing and having those few completed projects, because you know the last 20% of the game, everyone knows the rule, is like takes 80% of your time, and I think that's when you get the most learnings out of the whole development process, because it's easy to start but hard to finish. So yeah, just going for some game jams, trying to implement some small games, you'll easily really quickly see that your scoping abilities are always going to be expanded, and you know the scope of the game is going to be too big to finish it in the time that you planned. So this is really good learning.
So basically, practice makes perfect.
Exactly. It's as simple as it is.
All right. So a lot of our games have a Wheel of Fortune mechanic in them. And we have a Wheel of Fortune here in our office, but it's not one that you win prizes on. It's one that you win questions on. So these questions can be hard. They can be a bit funny, but they're okay. So are you ready to give it a spin, or rather, I'll give it a spin for you since you can't be here?
Well, let's give it a go.
All right, let's go then. Aga, welcome to the Wheel of Fortune. We're here, and the rules are simple. I'm going to spin it. I'm going to take a question out of one of these envelopes. I'm going to read it, and then you'll answer it as honestly as possible. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, simple enough.
So are you ready to spin?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so that was a close one. Let's see what we have here. All right, the question is, if you were to be stranded on a deserted island, what 3 things would you take with you and why?
Oh my God. That is an interesting question. I think I would take solar panels to have electricity. And probably something sharp as well, so I can build stuff. And then the other part will be water. Somehow I can collect water in, maybe. I guess maybe too practical. I don't know.
All right, so you would go full practical, nothing fun, and no volleyballs you can paint faces on to talk to.
Yeah, no, Mr. Wilson, no. But I guess I will be able to build it. Hopefully, you know.
So all that experience in playing survival games might come in handy then.
Yeah, exactly. Just put it in practice, you know?
That'd be an interesting test. Survival game player gets stranded on a desert island. That might be a good show.
Yeah, let's see how games are good, at teaching stuff.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thanks a lot for the answer. And
Yeah, thanks a lot.
let's go back for one last question. We're back from the Wheel of Fortune. How'd you like that experience there and that question?
Well, that was quite interesting. Still waiting for the rewards.
We'll be negotiating that later. But for now, we have one last question, one that we ask every guest. And it's deceptively hard, I think. What do you think is the future of the gaming industry?
Okay, definitely not the easiest one at the end. Well, I think in general, gaming will be more prominent in our lives because it allows us to go into the world and embrace the different worlds. So it's much easier to build your own stories, and I think that's the most important thing and in gaming that allows people to do is actually define your own stories in specific surrounding on specific environment that the game provides. So just building a world, and you can build yourself in that world. So I just hope with new technology like VR, hopefully maybe in some longer future we'll be able to actually immerse ourselves more into the new worlds that the game developers are building. So I would like to that the industry would go in that direction, but of course technology, we still need to wait for that.
That sounds like an awesome future. I'm especially looking forward to more stuff in VR, since I think that's a big part of it. And I would really like to thank you for this interview. It was really fun. There were some awesome insights. So I hope to see you around. And I don't know, any last words to our audience?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And it was a pleasure to talk to you. So I guess see you somewhere in real life in the office, maybe.
Hopefully. Or at an awesome TSG party. So...
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see you around, and have a great day. Thanks.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.